Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of welln'ish. As per usual, I'm very excited about today's guest. So, without further ado, I will let her introduce herself.
Hey, my name's Anna von Hoyningen Huene. You can just use Anna. Last name is a little bit complicated. I'm the owner of AcroPark studio in Vaudreuil, and we teach circus arts and pole fitness. So,
You guys should really check it out. I look forward to your videos daily. You and Amanda, I'm like, ooh, whoa, Gibbs.
oh, you know Amanda?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
She's,
in a Christmas showcase, and she's fabulous.
yes, I kept seeing videos of the Christmas showcase, and I'm like, I need to interview her because this is so cool. So for some people who don't know what was the word term that you used?
Circus arts and pole
Circus arts and pole fitness. So just to start off, can you explain the difference between the two? So what circus arts are and what pole fitness is?
So circus arts is many things, and I probably should have said aerial circus arts because we
Okay.
focus on anything that is up in the air. But there's like a million disciplines in aerial circus arts, and we teach um, aerial silks, aerial hammock, aerial hoop. We have trapeze and straps, but we don't have group classes for it.
Cool.
So quite a bit of disciplines. Most of them have you suspended up in the air. And then pole fitness is relatively newer, I suppose. Pole fitness would be the term for the activity that people do when they're using pole to stay in shape or to get in shape or whatnot. Since then, we have a few new terms. One is pole sport. So if you're taking it to a competitive level, then oftentimes
Nice.
people will refer to it as pole sport. When I mention that, like at the airport when I'm traveling to competitions, they think I'm saying pool sport and I'm a swimmer or something. It's not, translated to that area of life yet. But pole fitness is So where do I begin? So it definitely has its roots in like nightclubs,
Yeah.
and then it also, I guess, various other areas. Like for example, I believe in India, there's something called Malakam,
Okay.
and it's a post that is about this big, and it's wood, and these athletes are doing these amazing things on it. Then there's also a circus discipline called Chinese pole, which is also a bigger pole, but it's a little bit smaller than the Malakam.
Mhm.
And it's wrapped, so you wear shoes and pants, and they do all these crazy things. So if you kind of take all of that together, that's, I suppose, where pole fitness comes from. But I would say the majority is from the nightclubs. And I think when people realized how acrobatically challenging it is, it became a fitness thing. And then there, I think it kind of developed into this competitive sport that isn't it's kind of recognized, and it does have observer status in the Olympic Committee. But
Cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, they do. So they're an observer sport now.
Okay.
There's a federation in Europe that have kind of pushed into that direction, but I think we're still
Nice.
quite a bit away from it being accepted into the
Okay.
Probably.
Well, I mean, I remember we did some sort of bonding thing at this place that I worked, and we went to a pole class. And at this point in my life, I thought I was like the fittest person on the planet. I was doing CrossFit like twice a day, and and I was pretty good with the gymnastic side of CrossFit. Like anything that was like body weight, like pull ups, muscle ups. So I was like, I can do this. No, it was so hard. It was so embarrassing. And the worst was like, I remember doing moves and then I would watch them back, or like we took pictures and videos of each other. And it was like, oh my God, I thought I was like way up in the air, but I was actually like an inch off the ground, barely moving fast. It was very humbling. It was not easy. And like the like strength it takes from like holding something like between the cracks of like your knee and like your elbows. Like I had like burns, and I was just like, this is a whole other level of strength.
I came from it as a circus artist. I started circus when I was very young. And
That was going to be my next question, actually, was like, what was your journey as an athlete? How did you end up finding and falling in love with pole?
Well, through a student, actually. So I had a silk student. So the silks, I guess, for people who don't know, it's like the drapes that hang down and people climb.
Cool.
Stuff. So I was teaching her, and she's like, "So I'm doing pole fitness. You know, you should try it. It's really good. It's really fun." And I'm like, "Pole fitness? Like, what the hell is that?"
Yeah.
I went with her, and I was like, "Geez, I mean, I've done this stuff my whole life, and certain techniques were very similar, but because it's a pole and not a big one, like it's 45 millimeters thick, so it digs in there."
Yeah.
Leg and yeah, so I was like, I had done the Chinese pole before, which when you hook your knee on that, like, I mean, I guess for somebody who's never done it, it's quite uncomfortable, but for me, I was like, well, it's okay. Like, I just put my leg on it and it hangs there, and I'm wearing pants, right? Yeah. But with a fitness pole, it's a metal, so you're hanging. You need your skin to stick. Like, we're not wearing skimpy clothing because we want to necessarily show off our body. Maybe sometimes, but. It's because we actually, like, the heat of our body and the sweat kind of makes us stick.
Yes.
And that was new for me. And I was like, geez, I thought I had like a pain tolerance, but clearly I did not. But it didn't take long to kind of assimilate to it because I had that.
Yeah. So. Do you find that your skin texture has changed? Like, I remember when I was doing CrossFit, it was like I couldn't wait for my calluses to grow so my hands wouldn't rip like every time I went on the rig. Is there like an element of that at all?
Totally.
Okay.
I think, I mean, a lot of like people are like, oh, you have to kill your nerves. I'm like, you know, you're not killing your nerves, and you're not, you know, you're not building so much callus that you don't feel it anymore. Yeah. It's just your nervous system isn't going, you know,
each time,
you know, you hook something. So, yeah, it goes away, but I can't say that it's like pain free now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm sure we'll get to that in a sec with the whole pregnancy talking, but when I came back after, that was
okay.
Like a newbie again.
Oh, actually, really?
I'm not sure why. Maybe again, nervous system changes, like sensitivity changes, hormones.
For sure.
Wow. Yeah. it was pretty intense. But like this thing, like your hands get used to it, your grip strength gets better. So holding onto a bar like this is common, is kind of normal for our bodies to be able to do that, but to hold on to something like this is quite strange. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did you get into like circus and acrobatic stuff? Like, it was never really introduced to us in high schools, or, you know, it's something that like I wouldn't even know where to go if I wanted to get into it. So how did you end up in that world?
So I did ballet as a child, and I did gymnastics, and I grew. I mean, I'm not tall. I'm 5'6" and a bit, but for a gymnast, that's fairly tall. Mm-hmm. And I always felt like my coaches nowadays. Again, I feel like they're getting better with that. They're not being so like, oh, you have to be like this to be a gymnast. But I guess back then it was like, well, if you're not, you know, 5 foot nothing or below, then you're not going to be able to do the tricks that you want to do. And I'm like, you tell me that, like, I'm going to be like, no, then I don't want to do it.
Proving you wrong. Oh, in that sense. Okay.
I wanted to have all the chances in the world.
Yes.
And I was like, well, if my height is such a problem, then anyways, it was not just the height. It was also like the rigidity of it and the very meticulous nature, which I enjoyed, but then it also kind of squished creativity. And then how did I find circus? So I think initially, so my parents met at a Club Med. Mm-hmm. Club Med always had circus. They had flying trapeze, and they had all these artists, and they took us. My parents took us on a Club Med trip, and there was a trapeze, and my eyes were like, and so they hung me from the trapeze, and that's the end of the story. And then because we lived in Montreal, and Montreal is a hub for circus, it was a little easier to have access to classes.
Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Were you ever part of any circuses, or?
So I did more corporate events.
Okay, nice.
Wouldn't let me quit school, which I thank them for now.
Yeah.
But you can't do that all full time. Mm-hmm. So I did it alongside my schooling my whole life.
Okay.
But now it works out well because I don't know that I would have a business if I hadn't kept going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes sense. One thing that I love about pole fitness is that there's an element of embracing sexuality. You know, we grew up in a time where sexuality and expression of that were usually tools to like shame women. Like if you were sexualized, then it was a negative thing. Or like sex tapes, they're always used to like shame women so that like, you know, they have no spot in society. And I just think it's really cool that this sport has evolved and it's like a safe place for women to embrace and like take that power back of like the ownership over their sexuality. And then on top of that, what I really love, like for any fitness world is like a sport where it's really like goal and strength oriented. Like your goals revolve around not necessarily like, not like a body goal, like a physical appearance. It's really like, I want to achieve X move, or I don't know what you call them, like combinations, combinations. Yeah. You know? And so anyways, I just find that that's really cool. So, I guess my question is like, in what ways do you find that pole fitness empowers women, or is this something that you like about it, or?
I mean, I think I never thought about it because for me, I saw the physical challenge and the artistry, because like gymnastics is just like, I mean, it gets, obviously you have like various degrees of gymnastics performance, but I find it very, very technical only.
Yes.
And circus brings in this artistic side, and where you don't have to do it one way, you can show it a little bit differently. Obviously there's a technique to every skill, but you can play with it to make it look a little different, to make it reflect your character. And for pole, that was even heightened more because there's an element of like we call it floor or base work, where you're kind of closer to the ground. And then you have the really aerial stuff. So there's a combination of artistry, athleticism, that I think is just so unique. In terms of embracing sexuality, like I'm the goofiest person, not sexy at all. Like I can teach the sexy pole, let's say, if you want to like separate, which I think is also problematic because we don't want to put things into cupboards. But yeah, I'm not the sexiest person in the world, and I start to giggle. So there's people who do that very, very well. But I think what is empowering is that you can choose with pole. Like, how do you want to present it? Are you something like some of the sensuality of it? Do you like to dance with the pole, or do you like the tricks? Like I'm a bit more of a trick person than I like a contemporary aspect of pole. So there's, again, that's another thing. Like you can make it look like anything. You can do contemporary dance with pole. Like it's becoming like a style almost. So I think that's what's empowering, is that you get to do you with pole.
I like that.
And you can do many styles, pick. So for me, that's, I think, the most empowering side of it. But if you're asking me about sexiness, that's not me. Unfortunately, I wish I could do it. I guess that's my issue. I'm not comfortable with my sexuality as much as I should be if I start to giggle, Yeah. But it's so fun, and a lot of women, I think, also enjoy that they can do this. They don't have to share it, though. They don't have to share with that they like.
Exactly.
And it's, obviously we still get people who are like, oh, next week on stage kind of thing. But what's so wrong with being on any stage in a nightclub, right? I think that's, anyways, those are the people you don't answer to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What kind of training goes into pole? So for people who are like, oh, I don't believe you, this can't be hard. How do you like get people to be able, because a lot of women actually in particular lack upper body strength. So how, like, let's say a newbie comes in, like what are the steps to getting them comfortable, getting them strong to be able to perform the different combinations and
tricks,
techniques?
So it's definitely tough. So of all the disciplines that I have at the studio, pole is definitely the one that gets the most attention. So the most new people or people inquiring, they're interested in pole fitness, which is super awesome, and interesting. But every single one so we do like a 4-week introduction for all newbies. You have to do 4 weeks because it takes 4 weeks to determine if you like it or you hate it.
Okay.
Because after the first class, everyone's bruised and scratched. And they just are like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I feel like after week 4, you have an understanding of, okay, is this something I could do, or is this something that I better leave because it's not my
Not
thing.
for me.
Not for me. But it's always remarkable how everyone kind of says the same thing. Man, it doesn't look that hard.
Yeah.
And so I think just kind of like introducing people to like throwing them in, but throwing them in a way where they're not going to get injured. And like you said, upper body strength wise, I think in general, most people like we use our legs all day long, right? But our shoulders, our back, those are not areas that we necessarily work on a lot, I think, in daily life. So at the studio, we focus a lot on stability before doing anything crazy. Most of the time you'll start with climbing, maybe some spins if you have good overhead range of motion.
Yeah.
And also so we do approach it very technically here at the studio, but it has to be fun too. So we'll throw in some fancy tricks that are not too difficult to get into, always painful, just accept it. Skin painful, not joint painful.
Yeah.
Will never be the case, but yeah, skin's going to hurt. And yeah, so there's this like fine balance between making sure people have fun the first time they try it, but also making them aware that this is not like, I don't want to insult any fitness crazes, but like, I feel like Zumba's pretty safe, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like you're going to, I mean, I've had people injure, like I've heard of people injuring themselves in a Zumba class, but usually that's not in the first class.
No.
You're not going crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, or yoga, for example. Like you can injure yourself doing yoga, but you're probably not going to in your first class.
Yeah.
But with pole, it's very possible. So like we have to be very careful and make sure that you're actually teaching like proper placement and all that. So try to balance it out between fun and technicality.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then what made you want to open your own studio?
So when I was 11, I asked my dad to build me a circus school.
Really?
I remember we were outside having dinner and I was like, can you build me a circuit school? And he said, we'll see. This dream has been in the works since the 90s.
I love that.
Yeah, I loved it. And I love teaching and I like breaking down instruction. It's what I studied in school partly also. And anything exercise science is definitely up my alley. So just all that together kind of made it a no-brainer. And also like finding a space that suits your needs in terms of competition prep, like is always challenging, right? You need like height, you need distances and stuff. And I mean, if you build your own, then you can have what you want, right?
Absolutely.
But I think it's grown into like beyond what I need and more like what I'd like to introduce to people. And like, I love sharing stuff because people don't think they can do it until they try it, right? So,
so you mentioned exercise science and teaching. Is that what you studied in university?
So I studied a whole lot of things that have nothing to do with each other. I did English literature, exercise science, and classical civilizations. Weird mixture. Because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was in personal training. So I ended up just kind of coming.
Okay.
Yeah. And then for my master's degree, I did educational technology.
Okay.
So basically
super interesting.
Designing instructional mapping and all that stuff. So all that combined kind of helped me. But I kind of knew what I wanted to do before I even started my undergrad. But, you don't know until you try.
Yeah. I was like you in university. I just found everything so interesting that like for all of my electives, they were just all over the place. The thought of doing a minor or double major, I was just like, no, like I want to learn about all these other different topics. And so I could totally relate to that because I had like women's studies, poli-sci, like everything and anything. But I think that's what makes you a well-rounded person. And
and it doesn't really matter what you ended up. I mean, unless you're a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, then I feel like you need to finish with the degree that you're going to get. Yeah. But I think for many people, it's like, doesn't matter what it says on your degree at the end. Sure, most of the time it matters. But for me, I was like, I don't really care. I just want a lot of everything. And it was always like this exercise science aspect. But so I have very traditional German parents.
Okay. And
they were like, what are you going to do, sports for a living? And well, no, like training people. What? So it was like it was a balance between what I found interesting and, I mean, in your 20s, do you know what can make you a living? I don't know. I didn't think about that. I just wanted to. So then I did English literature, but my dad was like, what are you going to teach? Like English literature? No, but I love it. It was all over the place. And
that's funny.
So, a bit of everything here and there. Yeah.
So I was just curious, before I go into my next question, if you could explain a little bit about like what kind of competitions do you do, like at like the peak of your like athletic career? What kind of competitions were you doing? What did you gravitate towards? What was like your bread and butter as an athlete?
For pole, you mean?
Well, anything.
Pole,
was pole like your main sport, like the one that you went, let's say, the furthest with, or?
I would say so. I mean, I did compete in gymnastics, but I didn't take that to the highest level just because I didn't. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't. When I found circus, I got distracted.
Yeah.
So I guess if you think about like in terms of the highest level, I think then pole would be the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Realized. It's so when I first, like when my slope student said, you need to do pole, I didn't know that there were competitions. Like, how would you even compare, right?
Yeah.
And then I kind of did some research and I found that there were so many competitions, so many associations, so many federations. And I just picked one in Canada, like the biggest one at the time. Yeah. I was like, let's start with this one.
Yeah.
And I registered so usually they have levels for all levels, which is another really amazing thing, which means you can compete even if you're a complete beginner. So they have usually like an entry division, an amateur division, a semi-professional, and then they have a professional.
Okay.
So I remember talking to that student. I was like, well, do you think I should start with amateur? And she's like, no. So I ended up going semi-professional, and I like almost died with fear because I was a performer. I wasn't doing aerial to be judged, right? You do favorites. I mean, usually the tricks that are impressive for an audience are not difficult. They're the easiest.
Okay. That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, and then you pull out a difficult move and they're like, it's, it's always disappointing. Competition, like the judges usually know, like, well, what's difficult and what's not physically.
Yeah.
But it was good. There was like it was a regional competition, and then you qualified for a national, and I ended up making it to the national. Wow. At the time, I finished second in my first like national, which was exciting. And then I was hooked. I was like, well, they seem to not hate me, right? Yeah. So let's continue. And then for a few years, I did a lot of pole competitions, various ones. I traveled, like, I think the farthest I traveled was Cyprus.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was a pole art competition. So usually you have competitions that are either more on the art side or more on the sport or fitness side, let's say. And this one was art, and it was crazy. It was, I didn't know Russia was so like represented in Cyprus, but all the athletes, it was all Russian. So I was backstage and I was like, my dad's half Russian, but I don't understand Russian. It was just like, I don't know what they're saying. And then this lady was just like, you're up. I'm like, okay. And that was the first time that I won prize money. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that was really fun. And then, like I said, I just kind of went from there. And I think the highest level that I reached was elite pole sport in the federation that is actually has now moved pole into observer status. So they're called the IPS, International Pole Sport Federation.
Amazing.
And I qualified for the Worlds, and then the Worlds were in Montreal in 2019, and I got second. That was my best.
Congrats! That's awesome.
That was exciting, and then COVID, right? So,
and what did your training look like then?
My training. Well, so because we're not like I mean pole competitors, if you want to call us. Like we don't have sponsors. Like we don't get paid to do this. We pay to compete. I had to keep working, obviously. Like I was, working at a gym, and I didn't have my studio. Actually, I think that year I opened my studio as well, which was a bad idea. Opening a studio, still having another job.
Oh my gosh.
So I mentioned that before answering your question, because it just means that my training was dispersed everywhere.
Yes.
But obviously, you need to periodize your training so that you're not burning out and all that stuff. But there was so much going on in addition that I might have burned out a little bit.
I was burnt out.
The training is, I guess like for any other competitive sport, lots of cross training, lots of performance training, like how do you perform and make it, so making it look easy, having a theme. Like it's not just, it's not like a gymnastics routine where you go and you execute. You have to execute, but it's also a performance. So I compare it to any other sport, and I don't know much about the sport, but skating, figure skating. It feels similar because the routines are about 4 minutes. Yeah. And just from what I've learned, the way that it's judged it seems to be kind of similar. Like certain elements, you do have to submit a score sheet ahead of time with the tricks you're chosen to be judged on, bonuses and that kind of thing. So that type of competition is particularly intense, but I found it easier to train for that because I know what they want from me and how they would like it presented. And if I can execute that, that's great. A lot of other competitions, they don't require that. So it's a lot more accessible for people, but usually it's like, well, what do they want from me? But this
I would want the list.
What's that?
I would want the list.
Yeah. Like if I'm going to do it at that level, like I don't want to waste my time. So so you have like 11 compulsories that you have to perform of various like flexibility, strength, dynamic, that type of thing, spins. And then you have bonuses. So anything in addition that you do. So there's an element of flexibility training that has to go into it, strength training, and then your routine itself. So I would say in terms of hours, I think I was doing about like 20 hours of total training, maybe more. But that's not just on the apparatus, but it's a lot. And I'm not a spring chicken. Like I started when I was 30.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So
clearly I don't know how old you are right now then.
I turned 39.
What? Yeah, I would not have guessed that.
Yay! My child is done.
Wow.
Because it's a new activity, right? So I had that it even existed. And so, I came to it a lot later, and maybe I'm lucky, like genetically, that I'm able to handle, like I was able to handle it. You start a new activity. But again, I had that background. So it makes it like, I think I had an time.
Did anyone coach you?
No.
Oh, you all self-motivated, learned. Wow.
I took certifications. But it's such a new sport, right? So I just took all the knowledge that I had acquired from training other athletes in other sports and kind of said, well, what is it like? It's gymnastics. It has some of this, some of that. Let's just try this formula. So it took me a few years to get it right. I think the formula up until 2019.
That's really cool.
Yeah. it was fun because I kind of experimented on myself. Unfortunately, sometimes it ended up in like a little bit of an injury here and there. But I think that's more just because I was already older, right? I mean, your body can't handle that kind of volume for so long. Yeah.
Well, you're really like a pioneer then for Montreal. Because, I mean, I don't know, maybe you'll be able to say, are there a lot of other studios like this? Because
Yeah, there's a fair bit of pole studios in Montreal. I
like
think
with Circus too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually like it's starting to really mesh, and even like Circus has so much pole in it now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
they actually contacted me while I was pregnant and told me there was an opening for a show, and if I was interested in submitting my my audition video. And I was like, no.
You're like, there's two of us. Oh, that's really cool.
Look, I don't know that it would have, even if they would have said, yes, please join us. Can I leave my studio? I don't think so. But it was definitely, that was a culmination of some work. But I was like, what are the chances, you know? But I was 5 months pregnant. I was like, and in my head, the first thought was, can people do it? And there's no way. Like, I was already showing. Like, they would have been like, what is this? What are you doing here? Oh.
Technically, they probably would not even be allowed to ask you, though. But imagine you're just like in the show, 9 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, but by the time, like, that was when I had the conversation with the recruiter.
Yeah.
Like by the time I would have even submitted something, that would have been later. Like I would have been definitely out to here.
Yeah.
Anything would have materialized.
Too funny.
But yeah, no, there's a few studios, and we have great polers here just because of the circus community. I think
that's great.
It's so transferable, you know, that I think a lot of circus artists are just saying, hey, like this is cool, and not a lot of people
and I can compete
doing it. Yeah, but I don't think that like once you're doing it as a performer, I haven't seen many do the competition.
Okay,
because competing like is so different than performing. Competing, you have to do certain things, whereas like performing, it's a lot more artistic free.
That's nice.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I don't know many artists who perform it who are like, yeah, gung ho about competition.
Okay.
You're being restricted a bit. I like because I come from sport background, right? So I'm like, give me the rules.
Yeah.
But they're like, don't give me rules.
Yeah. I hate rules.
Yeah. Which is great. But, you know, if you're going to go to the competition, you might as well read the rules.
Yeah. Makes sense. So in this podcast, we talk a lot about the transition from maiden to mother. So in your case, you know, that maiden phase, or, you know, being an elite athlete had a huge impact on your life. So I was just curious what your thoughts were going into that transition. Like, did you always want to be a mom? What were your worries? What were your concerns? Like balancing like that identity going into motherhood? Loaded question.
Yeah. I think on some level, yes, I always knew that I wanted to be a mom. But I have a lot of ambitions and motherhood, just especially with sport, it felt like, well, I can't do both. I thought that. Like, that's so, I was like, well, so especially with what I do, like my body has to be tip top shape, you know, and I have so much time to train and prepare. And I just like, the older I got, the harder it seemed to do it, you know? So yeah, it was tricky. It took me a few years, many years to, I think, figure out that if you want to be a mom, like you can go and be a mom. It's okay. Like nobody, you're not going to disappoint your students, or nobody's going to think that you're not good anymore.
Was there like an aha moment, or like something someone said, or something that was like, okay, now I'm ready. Now believe that I can do both, that it doesn't take away, or?
No, it was my biological clock that said, you better done now. I mean, I got pregnant at 38 and I was ready. And since I think 34, 35, I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, I have my partner. He's amazing. I met him when I was 31, I think. But we were like having fun, traveling, like competing, you know, and I was just, oh my God, when are we going to do this? Like, I'm having a blast, but I know that like it gets harder to get pregnant potentially, or you can't even get pregnant, you know? And then it was COVID. Honestly, it was COVID. It was like when it started in 2020, I was like, hey, so like, I don't have my studio, don't have my competing. What do I have? I mean, I have a great family. I have Brad, my partner, and but like now's the time.
There is no bigger sign in the universe right now that this is the time.
No. And I mean, it wasn't like, oh, COVID started and let's have baby. No. I had to like slow down, get some perspective, and be like, well, even if my body goes complete to crap, let's say, and that's a horrible thing to say, but who cares? Like, you know, I think in 20 years, I kept thinking I would be very upset if I didn't try to be a mom. And there's many ways to be a mom. So it wasn't like, oh, if I can't do it like with my body, then I would have potentially tried other ways. But luckily that was not an issue.
Okay.
So I was really lucky that I didn't have problems getting pregnant. So it's almost like I couldn't even like talk myself out of it kind of thing.
Right.
It's just like, oh, too late.
We're here now.
We're here now. And the first thing I thought when I saw the two lines on the stick was, I've lost control of my body. That was the first, like, I'm not sure that I should be proud of this, but I remember thinking like, oh God, I have no control. And I felt completely like, because my whole life I've been like, you know, like so in control of every movement of I've had to be for the sports that I've chosen, right?
Of course.
And then suddenly this little thing happens and I was like, like what's going to happen?
Well, it's a very, like 50% of the population will never, ever know what it's like to literally share your body. You know, it's like, it's such a unique thing that women can do. And like, I literally was just telling a patient that this morning, like I could feel her baby kicking and I'm like, it just never gets old or it never feels like normal or like, I'm never like, in awe when I feel that. Like you are growing a human being inside of you. And I mean, it just adds you know, as an athlete, you are so in tune with your body. And like for you, it's been your career, your work, your passion, your sport. It's like, that must be, and I'm positive that the athletes listening to this are going to be resonating with what you just said. It's like, it's your body that it has been so precious for you is now being shared. And there is an element where things are just happening inside of you. And even science doesn't even really know why some of these things happen to this day. So I would feel no guilt about that statement that you just made. Cause no, seriously, it's a huge undertaking.
I mean, I think if anything that I've learned, like having gone through it, is that not enough people tell others what they really think about being pregnant or having a baby or whatnot. So just be honest. But yeah, that was my first thought. And then obviously, I mean, of course I was happy, but, and it wasn't a negative feeling to feel like the loss of control, but suddenly I was like, I'm a host. I am a vessel and this thing has full control over me, but so cool, amazing experience. Even if, you know, if you were to ask me, you enjoyed pregnancy, I'm not going to say yes.
Okay.
But I was curious and I was fascinated. That was enough. I was sort of like, I felt like a bystander a little bit, like, hey, just, like observe what's going on. And I documented it for myself so that I could look at pictures and be like, no, you're not really losing control. You're pregnant.
Yes. Well,
So,
this is something, like, I'm glad that you brought that up, is that when I started working with pregnant women, I was shocked at the amount of people who struggled seeing their body change. And I don't know why I was surprised by this, because diet culture is so intense and strong. And like, of course, people are going to have negative feelings. Like, we grew up literally like on, what was that show? America's Next Top Model, you know, where it was like the things that came out of people's mouths. And anyways, I'm not going to go on a whole diet culture rant, but yeah, I was very surprised at how many women really struggle with the changing body. Because in my mind, it was like, oh, when I'm pregnant, eventually, it's like, I'm just going to know it's pregnancy. And it's like, it's just a baby. It's not, you know, I'm not, I haven't, you know, exactly. Yeah. But no, it is really hard for the majority of my clientele. And I found that interesting. And also talks to like our society in general. But I'm curious what like that added layer was for you as an athlete. Like, exactly like you said, it's like losing control. It's your vessel for so much, and now you're a host. So anyways, I just feel grateful that you would share that, and I'm glad that more people are talking about it, because it is really real.
Yeah, for sure.
That struggle.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't like I'm actually have to be proud of myself, because I thought it would be harder, like emotionally, for me to see my body changing.
Yeah.
I think once you're obviously pregnant, then it was easy, because I was like, I'm not, you know, I'm losing control. I'm not weak. I'm much stronger. But like, yeah, the first couple of months when especially if you're, I mean, and I've heard this from even like Pilates instructors, yoga instructors who I know, they were really uncomfortable with their clients looking at them while they weren't telling anyone yet. They were like, I don't want my clients to think that I'm letting myself go. And to me, that's such a huge problem. So like, who cares if you put on a few pounds, and who cares if you look a little bloated, right? We shouldn't have to explain ourselves. And anyways, like, again, that's sort of another topic.
No, but it's a sad reality. But when you're an instructor, a personal trainer, a coach of any form, there's always eyes on your body.
Yeah. And with what I do, like, we're telling a story with our bodies. Like, people aren't looking us in the face necessarily. You know, I mean, sometimes our facial expressions matter during a performance, but most of the time we're talking with our bodies. So if there's anything different, I don't know if people really notice it, but I think the artist or the coach or whoever is being physically present is so self-conscious. Luckily, I have, and I'm really surprised. I didn't feel that way, but I think it might have been because in my first trimester, I actually lost 7 pounds because I was vomiting. I was sick. It was horrendous. I thought I was going to die. So by the time I started showing, I could tell people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like danger zone or whatever they call it. And not that you're really ever out of a danger zone in pregnancy, but you know, like the acceptable time usually is what, 14 weeks. Yeah. So I couldn't wait to tell people, because I was like, okay, now I can like just kind of relax a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, it's really tough. And I don't know how I got through it. I just knew that I really wanted a baby. Like, you know, it's 9 months. Not the end of the world. And I knew that, like, you know, as I get older, I definitely want to still be competitive, but and definitely perform. But performing is different. Like, I think I can perform into my 50s, even 60s if I wanted to. Yeah. Like, you're pushing your body to a level that you might want to consider as you pass 40 and beyond.
What did your training look like when you were pregnant?
So like I said, the first 13 weeks I was a vegetable, and I didn't do anything. So I think it started around week 6. So
that's like 2 weeks after you know you're pregnant.
Yeah. Ooh. And I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. Like, nothing's happening. I'm not nauseous. Cool. Bang. Week 6. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
I had to like take medication, and it didn't really do very much. And I don't know how, but none of my students noticed. I don't know how, because I was
A room full of women. That is rare.
I mean, I think one student afterwards said, "Yeah, you were not as bubbly as you usually are."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I would consider myself a bubbly person necessarily, but I was a little, maybe looking a little miserable.
I never know when people are pregnant, and I fall for all the lies and all the things, even though it's like literally my field. Like my sister-in-law was pregnant. She was literally not drinking, and everyone's like, well, maybe she's pregnant. I'm like, no, she's just really healthy. She goes on like health. Like I was like, no, she just like, you know, and I've convinced everyone. I was like, you know, she's just the type to drink responsibly and just go through a phase where she wouldn't want to drink because she's like healthy and takes care of herself. I'm like, no, she's not pregnant. No way.
Well, that speaks to your good-natured belief in people, right? You don't think people
Our physio too. Like she had just gotten married. We all knew she wanted kids, and like suddenly her schedule was reduced, and like she was having like whispered conversations with the receptionist and being like, oh, I need to go home. And I'm like, never crossed my mind. Like, what is wrong with me? I have no pregnancy radar.
That's so funny. I mean, it was intense. Like I literally would go in the middle of class and be like, sorry, I have to pee, and like be sick.
Yeah.
And I would like get into the studio, do my classes. But for also, I did lie a little bit, I have to say. Now that I'm thinking about it, I said, oh yeah, I have some injuries, so I'm not going to demo anything, because I was just too nauseous. I wasn't like showing or anything. I could have done anything safely, but I physically was like just too nauseous. Mm-hmm. And like, I get in, get out, go to the back of the building, throw up again.
Oh my gosh.
It was so bad. Now I'm laughing about it, but I really didn't know if I could make it through. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, second trimester was glorious. So back to the original question about the training. The first 13 weeks, like I would say very little. I spent a lot of time in bed, like just trying to survive, trying to figure out like what is the most important thing that I do for my business that I need to do, and everything else just has to wait.
Okay.
And then once I was feeling better again, I just, so I had done a certification in pre-postnatal fitness.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but it was not helpful because it was, because I started to research a bit more, and I was like, my God, either they're saying don't do anything, or like, you know, lift a 5-pound dumbbell and call it a day. Or they're like, oh, listen to your body. What the hell is that? Like, I mean, I'm in tune with my body, but my body is telling me I'm pregnant, and that's it, you know?
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of very valuable information I find that is really evidence-based.
Yeah.
You know, from what I could find anyways. So I did what I felt was good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know how to train with good technique and all that. And for the first little while, like you don't really have to change that much. The intensity, I took, I guess, down the intensity.
Yeah.
I was doing, so my studio is next to the CrossFit de la Cité.
Oh yeah. I've been there.
Yeah. And so really convenient. Like if I wanted something a little bit more like, let's say energy consuming, then I did those classes. I just didn't do any jumping, anything dynamic. I would just avoid that. And for my discipline, thankfully, we keep our feet off the ground. So I did a lot of the hammock, which is the tissue that's like the loop. I felt that was so good because you could fit through the middle. You had your arms in a position that didn't require you to like, because the pole is like this, the silk is like this.
Okay.
So you're kind of like scrunched all the time. Whereas the hammock, you're more like this in this position. So I felt it was more of a neutral position. And you're supported, like your body is supported for the most part. So that felt really great. And I did that up until 24 hours before labor. Don't do that. I'm just putting it out there. That was not a good idea. I had to sub classes because half my staff got COVID.
Oh no.
Into labor. Yeah. So I was substituting classes, even though I was on maternity leave. And that last class was a hammock class, a level 1 class. And I remember the students were all like, "What the hell is she doing up there?"
Yeah.
I think they were expecting the kid just to come right out. Yeah, I think that was one too many splits, and then he came a day later.
Okay.
Yeah, like definitely that's not. I'm telling you that because that's what happened, but I don't know that is
recommended.
No, definitely not. Like, no, I would not recommend that. In general, even like aerial's doable when you're pregnant, but I think you have to have a really good base because you can fall. Like, yeah. Like if you're gonna do it with a crash mat. And but I did continue some of that. Pole did not feel good for me pregnant. Okay. The pole would like dig into the side, and it just
also like this. I mean, I guess with all of the other things too, but the center of gravity is completely different. Like
everyone kept telling me that would affect me, and I didn't mind.
That wasn't it. Okay.
No, I mean, obviously you're heavier. Like I gained 30 pounds. Like I was like definitely heavier, and I felt that, but I didn't feel like lopsided or anything. I had to change my technique for certain things. Like when you invert your body, like when you go upside down on something, usually like that's significant amount of abdominal work.
Yeah.
I would kind of go in sideways or use my hip flexors only.
Okay.
So I modified the technique, which I also don't recommend because then you're making habits that hopefully, you have to break after pregnancy. But in my case, like I kind of had to continue working.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of teaching from the ground in the sense that I would verbalize what I would want them to do. But if you have beginners, like they don't have a concept of what you're even talking about. You kind of have to show stuff.
Okay.
I used video demo too. So I tried to be as creative as possible so that I didn't have to put myself into positions where it just didn't feel good, So I'd say most of the training was off apparatus for me.
Yeah.
But I felt so strong, like really, really strong. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And you don't have to feel bad for scaling.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. I remember going to the CrossFit and they were like, "We're doing box jumps."
Yeah.
Box jumps. Okay. And I'm like, not doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't normally, I have a personality where I'm like, if everyone's doing box jumps, I'm doing box jumps.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat everyone.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even care. I'm just going to do my step ups and I feel awesome because I'm like training with a weight vest permanently. Yeah. So I actually really love that because there was sort of an excuse that wasn't an excuse, it's just like, this is the reality and I'm going to do how I feel. Like I'm going to do what I feel is comfortable for me. And that was like my favorite part of training.
Well, I think that's great that you were able to kind of tune down that competitive nature during pregnancy. Cause I find like, I guess like online or social media, it's like so many women like have to prove that they can do like all of these extremely hard things during their pregnancy. And like, and I'm like not taking away from those achievements, but I'm just like, why is now the time to have to prove that and step away from, to me, it's like the time where you kind of are the most intuitive. Like you're literally growing someone, your blood volume has doubled, like your physiology is completely different. Like it just seems to me like not the time to prove that you can do like these great, I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but
it does. I mean, I don't want to sound like that didn't go through my mind.
Yeah.
And I did have moments where like my ego needed to be stroked and I needed to see if I could do something still. So like, so for example, like, when you're climbing a rope with just your arms, like we do it on the fabric, so on the tissues. So I did that up until I think like 32 weeks and I wanted to see how many I could still do. And I think the last time I did it, I got 5 and my arms were like
shaking.
And it was so not necessary. But for my mental well-being, I also changed, like, obviously I didn't do it with my legs up because I didn't want my abs to like do weird stuff. But I needed to do that. It was safe for me. And I just needed to know that I still had that like in me. But in terms of feeling like competitive, definitely.
Cool.
Luckily, surprisingly.
Did you find that being an athlete helped your mentality going into labor and delivery? Because sometimes I think about it and I'm like the closest I've ever felt to death was doing Fran at CrossFit. And I'm like, during my delivery one day, I just need to like channel that. Like I felt like I was going to die and just breathe through it. And like, anyway, but do you find like being an athlete helped you in any way?
No. I think I have a long answer. So I took an amazing prenatal course with Motherwit. Have you heard of it? So no. I had a doula for my birth, and they provide. It's a group of doulas who work together. Amazing, and they also provide this like very intensive prenatal course. They did it online, obviously, because of COVID. And initially, I was like, "Give me all the drugs." Like, just pump me full. Like, I don't want to be in pain. And then I took this course, and they went through, without judgment, went through every single type of birth, unmedicated, medicated, C-section. Okay. Just presented what will happen, what to expect, and that kind of thing. And when they got to the end, which the last one was sort of like primal birth, kind of like no medication, I was like, bring it on. Like, I want that.
Yeah.
And many people ask me, like, why though? And I'm like, I can't explain it. I just wanted to feel everything. And I didn't want there to be any kind of, like blurring of what was really going on. And then came the real thing. And I was like, because I was mentally preparing, like all my workouts leading up to to labor were like, okay, like I know how to sustain pain. Like I can handle it, and I know how to breathe, and I know my body. I know if something's not right. Yeah. And so I felt pretty confident, and and then it started, and I thought I was going to die. The labor was so painful, and so I labored at home for about, I don't even remember. I think it might have been like 15 hours or something like that.
15?
15, yeah. Which I think is not that bad. And I got to the hospital at 8 centimeters dilated.
Wow.
I don't know how that happened. But I could not breathe. Like the contractions were so close together. Like I was sort of delirious. Like, and I had done the course. Like,
did you feel like you lost control?
During the contractions, like I think it was my brain that was telling me a story that I couldn't control. It was saying, "You're in danger. You're in danger. You're in danger." Okay. And I just felt like it was coming to a point where it was like in my throat, and I like afraid. I think I was afraid for my body. Okay. I didn't really. It was my first time. I didn't know what was going on. And then they told me that he was crooked. Okay. So it would be a while, and I'm like, epidural right now.
Yeah, give it to me.
Give it to me now. And it was the most glorious thing in the world. Yeah. So and then the pushing, like it was long. But I had that. I think that's where maybe it helped. Okay. I didn't feel tired. I wasn't like, complaining about having to push here and there and again and weird change position, barf here and, kind of like. Barf. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was a pukey birther. Big surprise. I was like so sick for 3 months. Oh, my God. I felt so good, though. Like vomiting when you're in labor, for me, I don't know about other people, but I was like, it needs to come out. Yeah. So I think it helped for the physical work to have an athletic background, because you're used to pushing your body and sort of, how to do that. At first I was like, even with the epidural, I felt like I could feel everything, which was, so I must have been well done. I don't know if you can mess up an epidural, but certainly, although they did have to poke me a few times, which didn't feel very pleasant. So I don't know. I'm not disappointed in myself that I chose the epidural because I had originally really wanted to do it naturally.
Yeah.
Let's say unmedicated, because I feel like natural comes with so much judgment, I find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of pain, it didn't help me because I thought I had a very good control over pain, but this is a whole different kind of experience in terms of pain. But in terms of the work that has to be done to get the baby out, I think it did. Yeah, I think so. But hard to say, right? Hard to say because I can't go back and be like, let's not do anything for 9 months. See.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I feel what you said about like wanting to feel it all. I feel that way. And I feel like just hearing you feel like I felt in danger. It's like, I feel like that's probably where my mind would go to.
But and I remember having a conversation with my little brother who's like super intuitive and very like in tune with like the brain and the body. Yeah. And he was like, pain is an experience that the brain creates. And I'm like, yes, I got this, no problem.
Yeah.
No. I know they told me they told us in the course, like every woman experiences labor differently, and you might not have anything, or you might have a lot of pain. Me, like I had it all out in the front.
Okay.
I've heard of people who have pain in their back. I mean, I don't know what's better or what's worse. I'd rather not have pain at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, but still overall super experience. Like I can't say enough amazing things about it. Yeah.
And now that how old is baby now?
Well, actually, you know him as Rurik.
Yes.
Call him Wolfie.
Oh, okay.
So,
Wolfie.
Yeah, Wolf is his middle name, so it's Wolf. And Rurik it's a German name. It seems to be quite difficult for people to say here. So Wolfie seems easier.
I love that name.
Yeah, it's so cute. So
how old is he now?
So on Saturday, he turned 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 8 months now postpartum. Is there anything you think about now when you are going into pregnancy or while you're pregnant that you can like laugh about, or like what's your 2020 vision of like the fears you had before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and like what was kind of like your silver lining, or I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm saying like how you were like really, you felt like a host. You felt like it was overwhelming to see your body change. And like, now do you look back on that differently?
I feel like now time passes so quickly. Whereas when I was pregnant, I was like, oh my God, like longer. Like, I mean, I'm all like, entertained by the situation, but like, can we just move it along? And now, like, he's almost been out as long as he was in. And I think now I just laugh at how life was slow. If that makes any sense. But otherwise, I can't really say that I did things during pregnancy or I felt things that were like unwarranted or I think I'm actually like, I'm not proud of myself very often, but in terms of the pregnancy, like I have to say I'm like, did good, you did okay, I think that's important because I do see that a lot of women struggle through it. And I thought I would too, because I had body image issues and all of that. And I did, there were days where I looked at myself and I was like, oh my God, like what is happening? But I think, yeah, the best thing that I could have done, which I think I did, was to kind of document it for myself. I would share it on the internet too, but I was like, I don't want people thinking that, like, I don't want anyone to feel bad if they don't feel this way.
Yes.
At the same time, if they're consuming my content, they obviously don't hate me. But yeah, the documenting with pictures or a journal, I didn't really write a journal, but I kind of kept note of certain feelings, and I was like, hey, but this isn't real. Like, this is not what really is going on. You're pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, you need to reframe So I can't say that I can look back and go, oh God, like I was so wrong about that, you know. If anything, now I'm like I was so wrong about what it's like to have a baby. Yeah, I think as being pregnant, I was like, oh yeah, once the baby's here, that's easy. No, it was easy being pregnant. Yeah. It's more it's the, and I think that's what I struggled with the most. Like, I didn't have the postpartum anxiety or depression. I didn't have the baby blues. My like baby blues hit me at like maybe 4 months post birth, where I got really anxious about who I am. Like, I felt like I maybe still have it a bit, where I feel like I have an identity crisis. Like, I'm not really athlete anymore. I haven't competed, though I just did sign up for a competition.
Yes.
But in hammock, it's the loopy thingy.
Yeah.
I feel
Good
like
for you.
Yeah, I feel like I can't quite bring the pole yet. But yeah, like I'm not only athlete, I'm also getting older. Like, what am I gonna have another baby? Like, all these things are in my head, and I just like, I'm a studio owner, but I can't like fully commit. And am I doing a good job? Like, am I letting anyone down? That to me is the most overwhelming part of this whole process, is that I want to be a good mom to him, but I also don't want to just be like so hyper focused on him that I forget who I am or what I want, because I feel like I've worked really hard for many things and I don't want to drop them, you know? And I don't want Wolfie to learn that, you know, women just disappear once they become moms, right? That's like really important for that he sees that. Obviously now he doesn't know what's going on. He can just crawl like a little bit, but
yay. Well, crawling I find is like the cutest thing.
He's not even there yet, but he's kind of like doing the air hump.
Yes.
Where he's like, yeah. And you told me it would happen, right? You said he would start to turn his pelvis, and I'm always like trying to like tilt it. I'm like, come on, stretch it. And so he can kind of get his knee under, and then he kind of like does the little
so cute,
then, like kind of stops again. Yeah,
it's all part of it.
Yeah, I'm like, you take your time, buddy, with the whole crawling thing. And the walking thing. Like, it's fine.
Now you have to keep your eye on him even more than you already do when it can start getting around.
Well, yeah, I feel like now he's just like, he's still pretty like immobile because he's a baby, but every once in a while he like thrashes and like rolls over, and I'm like, yo, where are you going? You know? Oh gosh, so scary. Yeah. So like that, the whole like becoming mom, that can't say it was, because I'm definitely not. I mean, I think for the rest of your life you figure out who you are, right? Know that this is like a short-term thing that's going to resolve itself. But yeah, like 4 or 5 months later, I was like, oh my God, who am I? Like, doing a good job? Like, well, like, what am I going to, what does the future look like? Like, I don't know. I worry, am I too old to be a mom?
Oh gosh, no.
So yeah, but
you've taken such good care of your body. Like, your body is the age of like a 15-year-old compared to most people. So
you know about my shoulder issues. That's another thing. Like, I feel like I'm 20. I act probably like I'm 20. But I'm not. And I know I'm not. Like, body's getting older, but then there's the whole, like, society says that I should be doing this as a mom, which is not doing fancy stuff flying up in the air. If you've, like, you won't believe how many people have said, well, don't you think you're a little old for this? Like, for what I do.
Wow.
Yeah. And now I'm like,
oh, I hate that.
Oh yeah. All the time. They're like, well, that's not serious. I'm like, I think it's sad that you're so serious that you don't do anything with your body.
Yeah.
So all of those things just suddenly kind of cut a little deeper, I find, because I'm a mom, and I can't even put into words exactly what I'm trying to say.
No, I think that I get
clear?
Yes, it's clear. It's like, you know, women with ambition. It's like you can't even acknowledge what they're doing without saying, well, where's the baby right now? When you're at work, what's the baby doing? It's like, did you ask my husband this when he went to work, or my partner, whoever it is? They don't ever get that question, or maybe they do.
He actually took the paternity leave. Like he took my paternity leave because I couldn't, I mean, if you own a business, you kind of can't like separate yourself completely. So I went back to work like a few days after, but I didn't teach.
Wow. Okay.
I took 3 months before teaching again.
Okay.
Physically. But yeah, so Brad took care of him for the most part. But
Brad.
He got the easy part. It's so easy. Now it's hard. And he just went back to work, actually, Brad, and they changed his schedule temporarily from, usually he works Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
For like the onboarding to onboard and back into job, they're doing Monday to Friday.
Okay.
So luckily his parents are close by and they kind of can help us out. But another thing, I'm like, how am I going to make this work? I have to work with a BBB right next to me, you know? So those are the moments where I get the anxiety.
Yeah.
Is this okay that I'm working? And I'm like, okay, buddy, you know, I'm on my laptop, like working, you know, I don't want to be like an absent-minded parent, but I also don't want to give this up. You know?
Well, I think just by having that mindset and the awareness, you will never let yourself become that. It's impossible. And I remember I was treating one mom. She's older now. She's like in her 50s, and like I was telling her, kind of had like similar feelings in a way to what you did, where it's like we're always told this story. I don't know if it comes from the media or what, or it's like once you have a baby, like your ambition ends, like this is the height of your career. And like, just wasn't sitting well with me that like, this is all I'm going to achieve. Like, no, I was telling her this, where it feels kind of like this is the height of what I'll achieve in my career. And like, that makes me like uneasy. And like, I don't like that feeling. And like, I don't know. And then she was like, no, for me, it was the opposite. Like the second I had children, it lit my ambition like on fire. She was like, I want them to have the best life, and I want them to see a strong mom who values hard work, and for them to have a role model. And like, she started an agency from the ground up, and the catalyst was having a baby. Obviously, like when the dust settled and like, you know, you're still like 8 months, still very early, but I was like so grateful to get that perspective from her. Cause I think a lot of women get those feelings where it's like, it's scary to have to give up a part of you, but I don't think that you have to. And even if you want to, that's okay too. But I just mean for the people who have those fears, it's important to hear and see examples. Like, I think it's going to be so good for all the women who come through your doors, who see how you balance it and how you do it. And there should be different ways of doing it, and we need to see more of them.
Yeah, I definitely. And I was actually very aware of that while I was pregnant. And I wanted like my students, who are all in sort of like prime childbearing years.
Yes.
That's my main clientele, right? So I would say anywhere between 20 and 45. And I really wanted them to see that after you can go back to this. Like, that's okay. Like, it's not a silly activity that, you know, you shouldn't be doing once you're a mother anymore, because it's not serious. Like, that's what bothers me the most.
Yes.
And yes, it's a leisure activity for most, but like, just because you had a baby doesn't mean you can't still do these amazing things with your body. It might be a little tricky at first.
Yeah.
But anything is, right? But I actually found it a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, I have to say. Like, I was so worried that I wouldn't be able to do anything anymore. But I think being smart during pregnancy and then right after made it that much easier. And everyone has a slightly different journey, but we do have a few students who are either now pregnant or I think planning to, just from I get like vibes. And maybe you don't, because
I wouldn't.
Well, also they mention it, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hope they come back. It's so often that they don't, and that's so okay. You know, like, I mean, having a baby is a lot of work. Like, let's just put it out there.
But dropping that seed and telling them that you can, that'll go a long way.
And it's two of us. So one of my instructors got pregnant, I think about a month and a half after me. So we were pregnant at the same time. So there's like, people were like, what the hell is going on at the studio? We're pregnant, bellies everywhere, flying are all over the place. And she's back too, you know, and I think that it's so great that she can show that to students as well. Because for some reason, students are like, oh yeah, but Anna is different. Right? I'm older. I'm like 10 years older than you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like really important. And I'm so glad that it wasn't as complicated as I had made it out in my head. Yeah. So that's helpful, I think, to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're running out of time, but I want to ask one more question. So I really wanted to have you on here because I do treat a few like high level athletes who, you know, I think there's like a shared concern or shared like nuance going into motherhood that athletes have. So I'm just wondering, what would be your advice for high level athletes wanting to become mothers? Or if you have any.
Just do it. I think like having a plan is really helpful, and not anticipating the time that you will return to your sport. Because I think that is stressful. Like I did, for my job, I just wanted to be able to teach. Like I told myself, okay, if I never compete or perform again, that's one thing, but like I have to be able to teach in my business. So maybe not putting a timeline on it, because you just don't know how you're going to react during pregnancy, after pregnancy, what kind of birth you're going to have. Like that all determines your recovery and your ability to return to your sport. But if I've learned anything, like our bodies are healing machines and anti-fragile and quite amazing, and to just trust that your body will know what to do. And if you've taken care of your body for so long, it'll take care of you after birth. I'm like fully convinced of that.
I love that.
Yeah. But yeah, don't beat the crap out of your body after. That's all I can say. The urge to want to go back is so strong, but I think as athletes, I don't know about other people, but you're kind of trained to kick the crap out of your body and push it and push it and push it. And that's what it takes sometimes to do well, unfortunately. In German, there's a saying. It sounds so stupid in English, but sport is murder. But in German, the two words rhyme.
Okay.
but my mom always says that to me. I'm like, oh, you know, I got this, and I'm like, I'm feeling so good. She's like, well, sport is murder.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, seriously, how helpful. But I feel like that mentality is a little bit in competitive sports, and this is not the time to feel that way, I think. And your body will thank you. I'm 100% convinced I can vouch for that. If you've taken good care of it and you continue to take good care of it during your pregnancy and you stay as active as you feel comfortable with, you will not forget how to do your sport. I thought that would be the case, but I just performed in our showcase and I didn't touch pole during my entire pregnancy. Nothing. Like I put my hand on it, sure, but I did nothing on the pole because it just didn't feel right. And then when I went back to it, it took me like 3 or 4 months and I just did a performance. Was it my highest level? No, but my body didn't forget how to do it.
Okay.
So I think that's maybe helpful.
Absolutely. I do find what's interesting hearing you speak and then thinking about the women that I know is that as like I'll put myself in the same category, like as we've kind of gotten older, because I'm, like you said, we're all in that kind of age category of childbearing years. I really do find that, I don't know if it's women, especially, I don't treat enough men to comment on them, is that they start training smarter, not harder, where it's like your mind, like in my 20s, you could not tell me like, don't work out as much. I was just like, you don't get it. You're not hardcore. Whereas now I'm like, I wish I would have been thinking about longevity then. And then it just like the second you get something, it's like, then it's like your mind switches. Like, not that it takes an injury, but I think it is an age thing, maybe an injury thing too, where you don't have that energy where you can be wasting it doing things. Just like more isn't better, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And training smarter and working on all the elements that maybe you didn't when you were younger become more important. So I think, like you said, like trust that you treated your body well and took care of it, but also trust that as an athlete, you've had a certain mentality that has pushed you through, and it's not just going to turn off because you become a mom. Like, you're always going to have that.
I actually think, if anything, like, you're going to be better after. You might not, I mean, I guess it depends on what sport you're talking about. Like, if you're like an Olympic lifter, I don't know, like those are some heavy weights that you're lifting over here.
For the pelvic floor, that is tough stuff.
Like, I just can't comment on it. But it's really true that I don't, like, for this showcase that we had on, it's just a little studio showcase, but it was the perfect time to prove to myself that it's okay. Like, my body is getting back to its thing. But it's like, I only trained like once or twice a week for this. And in the past, like, I trained like 6 days a week of pole.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Like, that's a lot. But that now is carrying over, I think. And I was blown away that I still was able to pull it off.
Good for you.
You know, and because I really didn't think, I thought I knew how to train, right? I think I did for the goal that I had. My goal wasn't to compete like last month, right? So, and if I were competing, you have to bring it up maybe a notch, but you do really get smarter, I find. And maybe pregnancy made a difference there as well. Like I said, not doing anything for 9 months and then being able to just do it again, like, that doesn't just happen. I didn't sit around my pregnancy, but still, it's not like my performance was improving. Like, that's not the goal.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess, like what I said, like, just do it. And if you want a baby, like, don't wait. I feel like I waited quite a bit because I was so afraid and so worried, and such a control freak of my body. So, yeah, and it's something great to experience if you can.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like I learned a lot, and I think this will be useful for a lot of people. So I'm really grateful that you shared so much. And yeah, thank you.
Well, my pleasure. So fun talking to you.
Okay, maybe we'll have to do it again.
Yes.
Okay, have a great evening. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.